All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about interconnection today, but go beyond the cross-connect. So a little bit of a journey. We've got some hecklers in the back, so don't mind me. If I pause, it's because of those guys. We're going to go beyond the cross-connect, talk a little bit about where interconnection started and where it's going. So interconnection enables data transport, right? That is the most basic premise of interconnection. A cross-connect between two networks. Earlier in the days, voice networks. Interconnection is even widely used when talking about power. The three big areas where we really see interconnection occurring these days are private interconnect. That's your interconnect between networks. It's a cross-connect, and it's evolved, and we'll talk about where it's evolved to in a little bit. Internet exchange. Internet exchange is a layer 2 facility that connects people at that physical layer, and then logically at the BGP layer 3. Edge computing cache. So you're starting to hear a little bit more of this. People like Facebook, Akamai, CDNs, all put their caches into telco networks, and that's also a form of interconnection. All right, so this is going to be our slide that we stick on for a little bit. If we look back, and we're not going to go too far back into the history of ARPANET and NSFNet, but we're going to start pretty early because we started seeing interconnection occur back in the early 90s, with the commercial internet exchange, with May East, May West, companies like MFS, Ameritech, who ran AADS. We even saw big internet exchanges that we see today start back then, like Lynx, London Internet Exchange, 1994, I believe it started. HKIX in Hong Kong, 1995. PAX, 1997. Equinix got started in 1998. So we've seen a lot of internet exchanges around for a while. Fast forward a little bit, and we have PeeringDB, which is an open source database that networks store their peering and interconnection information in. 2003-ish, AWS launches with EC2 and S3. And the reason I have these cloud computing organizations and products in here is because they're the real catalysts of where interconnection is going today. We get into the mid-2000s, and around 2010, we start seeing direct connect products, Equinix Carrier Exchange, the Cloud Exchange got formed. And what these was really the next iteration of the Internet Exchange. It's a platform which is really just a layer 2 switch that's facilitating connectivity between networks. And we're starting to see a little bit more of the automation come into play, which, the funny thing to point out here is back with May East and May West, there was actually automation back then in the 90s, which a lot of people may not know about, but there was a product called PeerMaker. So if you're around back in telecom those days, worked at MCI or anything like that, there was an actual automated tool to configure your peering between networks. And then it kind of died off for almost over 15 years. And we didn't see that level of automation until only a few years ago. We see Microsoft Azure come into play. We see Google Cloud. Going into 2013, 2014, we see the Equinix Cloud Exchange, Megaport launches, PacketFabric, the company I work at, launches, Console Connect, which is now a PCCW company. Moving a little bit further, we see France IX launch a marketplace. And this is kind of the next phase of what we're really starting to see, where the Internet Exchange is actually starting to evolve. It already was a platform. It had many networks connected to it. And creating a marketplace and the ability for customers to provision and buy new services was the next logical step. A little bit further, going into 2018, 2019, we see companies like PurePort launch, which is an overlay network that performs routing between clouds and on-premise SD-WAN connectivity back to the data center. We see DC Spine launch, which is basically another software-defined interconnect play that allows you to instantly provision capacity. They're based out in the Netherlands and just launched Belgium, I think. Apple launched their caching program called Apple Edge Cache, and that you'll start to see that in ISP networks, just like Netflix had Open Connect. Facebook has their own version called FNA. AWS is working on their own version now, I think. Google launched Global Cache, Google Global Cache back in 2008. So all the big hyperscalers are launching on-net caching appliances and programs to bring that content closer. And my argument around any of the edge computing talk you see these days is that's actually the first iteration of edge computing that we saw. And Akamai actually launched theirs in 1999. Fast forward a little bit more, 2018, 2019, still DKIX launched Service World. That again is like France IX Marketplace. It's a place to go buy and sell services over this layer 2 fabric. Last but not least on here, IX API, a joint effort by the big internet exchanges, Lynx, AMSIX, DKIX, all came together to collaboratively build an API to start automating the provisioning of internet exchange connections and partnership backend NNIs. So, where does that actually take us today? Well, we kind of saw where we're going from a single cross connect to platforms that enable multi-network connectivity to automated connectivity. And what that means today is interconnection is more than a cross connect, and it needs to be much more than a dumb box that you just plug into and connect. So it needs to be instant, and that applies to compute, storage, network, and for both cloud and metal. I'm sure if everybody saw the news, Equinix just acquired Packet, which is a bare metal hosting provider. Equinix has very much been focused on co-location, data center, and they are really the biggest interconnection player that we see in the world, with a business that is almost $1 billion in just interconnection. And their interconnection revenues are continuing to outpace co-location revenues. So we're going to see more of that, and it's all about that interconnected solution that the enterprise really wants. It needs to be scalable. It needs to be high bandwidth. It needs to be high speed. It needs to be adjustable. You can't buy a 10 gig circuit and then have to go through a manual process to upgrade that. That takes 10 days, 20 days, 3 months, 6 months. And it has to be multi-service. You can't be any more of these circuits and services that we're buying these days where it's just IP transit or it's just internet exchange. The convergence has to come together, and it is coming together over a single port. And we're seeing this a lot more frequently with the amount of companies and platforms that are launching. And last but not least, it has to go anywhere. Any destination, any service, any time. It must not be relegated to just data centers. It must include cloud. It must include on-prem. And all of those are starting to come together. Software is absolutely eating networking right now. As the gentleman previously kind of mentioned that, the telcos, you see them all filing for Chapter 11. These are the companies of the future that are going to be providing your connectivity, along with the hyperscalers that are building submarine cables, building fiber in Middle America, building their own data centers. And that's kind of where we're going. Everything is on demand and has to be instant. It's just like we look in the consumer space in the gig economy. That's all making its way to infrastructure. The buyers are changing. Everybody wants infrastructure and they want it now. Thank you.